Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Charlene Israel.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. The South is finally thawing out from an historic winter storm. Now some are beginning to assess the cost of the devastating storm to the economy and to some Georgia politicians. Abdel Hurd has the story.
Mild weather makes a welcome return to the South today, helping with recovery efforts from one of the worst winter storms to hit parts of the region in many years. The storm was a disaster not only for governments but for small and large businesses, as customers and workers were forced to stay home. In the Atlanta area, hundreds of drivers have finally been reunited with their abandoned cars. Schools remain closed, but state employees have been told to go back to work. Georgia's governor and other state officials apologized for not being prepared.
I'm the governor. The buck stops with me. I accept the responsibility for it.
This kind of thing has happened before, when all of Houston got on the roads to evacuate right before Hurricane Rita in 2005. The gridlock was deadly. One expert says the lesson is that cities have to have a plan.
Atlanta did not understand that snow is the enemy unless you're on a ski slope. Whatever was done was really done in response to the crisis, not because there was a plan.
Operation Blessing and the city of Norfolk, Virginia had a plan called Operation Snow Buddy, in which teams of workers helped dig out those most in need.
I was watching TV, they're reporting the weather, and they mentioned your name, so I called. Here you are. Thank you.
Operation Blessing also provided 20 tons of rock salt to help clear sidewalks and driveways. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Federal prosecutors will seek the death penalty for the Boston Marathon bombing suspect. He's being charged for the twin blasts last April, which killed 3 people and wounded, more than 260. 17 of the 30 charges against Johar Tsarnaev carry the possibility of the death penalty. Since the federal death penalty was reinstated in 1988, 70 death sentences have been imposed, but only 3 carried out. One of those was Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh.
Terror threats from Syria pose a great risk to America. The director of national intelligence gave that warning on Capitol Hill this week. James Clapper says the civil war in Syria has opened the door for the country to become a training ground for those who want to attack the U.S.
Tremendous concern here for these extremists who are attracted to Syria, engage in combat, get training, and we're seeing now the appearance of training complexes in Syria to train people to go back to their countries and of course conduct more terrorist acts. So this is a huge concern to all of us.
Clapper says about 7,000 foreign extremists from 50 countries are fighting in the Syrian civil war, including some from the U.S.
Turning now to the protests shaking the government of Ukraine. Reports are surfacing that government forces may have kidnapped and tortured opposition activists.
At least 3 activists disappeared in recent weeks, with one turning up dead. Another was found outside Kiev. It says that was beaten severely and cut with knives. Meanwhile, Christians are praying around the clock for a peaceful resolution. Our George Thomas has that story now from Kiev.
Wearing vests that say "Pray for Ukraine," Oleg Makdich and his friend have walked these streets around Independence Square, the epicenter of the political crisis, numerous times.
There's a mixture of hope and fear. People aren't sure about the future of our country.
CBN News went along as they delivered hot tea to men guarding numerous checkpoints around the square. They meet with pro- and anti-government demonstrators, including the police.
The church has to play a role in this crisis. We have to be salt and light.
I'm standing in a place called No Man's Land. It's in the heart of downtown Kiev. Hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers standing ready at guard, suited up and ready to do battle. On this side, you have dozens of burned out buses, hundreds of tires and barricades that have been set up by the opposition forces. Today, more than 2 months after Ukraine started this crisis, the nation remains at a standstill as the political folks try to come up with some kind of a resolution. Pastor Oleg has another solution. It's a spiritual one, and it is centered around prayer.
Oleg is a youth pastor at one of Kiev's large evangelical churches. He erected this prayer tent in the heart of the protest zone more than 2 months ago. when his countrymen took to the streets demanding changes in the government.
Our main message is that God is the only answer, not politics, not violence. We have to rely on Him to see us through this crisis.
Since November, tens of thousands of anti-government protesters have flooded the capital city, demanding the president's resignation. Xenia Benediktova, a college student and volunteer at the prayer tent, says the political uncertainty has left many disillusioned. She spends her time on the streets handing out copies of the New Testament and Gospel of John.
It's minus 23 degrees and cold out here, but the inconvenience is a small price to pay to share the gospel with people searching.
There's an army of Christian volunteers working 24 hours a day, praying, handing out free tea and food. Marina Kirinchenko is a mother of two from Kiev.
Protesters have been on the streets in freezing conditions for months, so when they come for a cup of tea, I encourage them, saying, "God bless you, we are praying for you and our country, don't give up."
Pastor Oleg says hundreds of Ukrainians have stopped by the tent and many have given their lives to Jesus Christ. Andrea Tostokori was among those who came for prayer.
I'm praying for God to bring righteous leaders to our government, people who can lead our country forward.
I asked Pastor Oleg how long he plans to stay out on the streets of Kiev. He says, as long as it takes to bring peace to our country. George Thomas, CBN News, Kiev, Ukraine.
Massive protests in Thailand are growing in advance of this weekend's election. Tired of political corruption, demonstrators have been on the streets for months. 10 people have died and hundreds have been injured. Nevertheless, the government is expected to win the election. As Asia correspondent Lucille Talusan tells us, that could prolong the protests.
Anti-government protests began last fall, closing businesses and hurting tourism in Thailand's capital city of Bangkok. Government leaders fear the entire country's economy will suffer if the protests continue beyond this Sunday's election.
It's a festive mood here in Bangkok. Tens of thousands of people joined this march, and their goal is to block every main road here in Bangkok. And these people are saying that they're going to do this until they see Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra step down from office.
A failed amnesty bill triggered the rallies. It would have allowed the Prime Minister's older brother, former Premier Thaksin Shinawatra, to return to Thailand without facing imprisonment. He left the country in 2006 after corruption charges forced him from office. Part of the proposed bill would have also returned $1.2 billion in seized assets to him. To appease the protesters, the Prime Minister called for a special election, but that stirred up even more anger.
These people say we are not going to vote because we don't believe in this kind of election. Democrat Party had already boycotted, so Democrat Party did not send even a single candidate. So which means that the election on 2nd February will bring about election results which will determine who becomes the government. But the government will be in power without legitimacy because you don't have main rival parties to go for election. And how could that be?
And what about the nation's small Christian community? Where does it stand? Church leader Pastor Bunlat Boyen says many church members are on opposite sides. He's calling for unity.
The Christian people, you are the people of the land, the country. You have to take it very serious that you are one who's supposed to be responsible, have full responsibility to your country. So your faith, your church life, that's very important.
Protesters want an election boycott, but claim they will not stop people from voting. As a precaution, the Thai government has deployed 10,000 police throughout Bangkok to secure polling places. Whatever the outcome, thousands of Thais say they are determined to continue their fight to reform Thailand. Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Bangkok.
Back here in the U.S., lawmakers in South Dakota have rejected a measure that would have protected clergy and religious groups who oppose gay marriage. Opponents said the state constitution already exempts pastors who don't want to perform same-sex weddings, so the state Senate Judiciary Committee killed the bill. But the bill's supporters are concerned about what will happen if the courts strike down the state's ban on gay marriages.
Texas turns the page on a new chapter in its long-standing cultural battle over textbooks today. The state's Board of Education votes on proposals to restrict who can serve on the panels that scrutinize the books used in Texas schools. In years past, some have objected to religious conservatives on the panel because they raised objections to science texts with extensive lessons on climate change and evolution. The Lone Star State is one of the largest textbook markets in the country, and publishers are inclined to tailor products to fit state standards and then offer them to other states.
Still to come, this NFL quarterback says real heroes are made at home, not on the football field. And he's calling on men across the country to step up and lead their families. Sunday is the Super Bowl, but former NFL quarterback Jeff Kemp has his eye on tomorrow. That is when he and the Family Life organization are challenging men to be heroes off the field in Stepping Up Super Saturday. And Jeff Kemp joins us now with more on this challenge. So why are you encouraging thousands of men to huddle up across the country in local churches and homes on Saturday?
Well, it really goes back to the fact that the most important issues of our nation trace back to the family. And whether we can make our marriages work and then bring the love of men into the lives of their wives and their kids, and many times to kids who don't have a family that's there to support them. And so on the Super Bowl weekend, when everyone's paying attention to heroes and superstars and accomplishment, and of course, who's going to be a champion, Family Life and the people at Stepping Up, a team of men that have put together an amazing resource that helps men figure out what is courageous manhood and what are the steps from boy to adolescent, to man, to mentor, to patriarch. We're bringing together tons of guys and letting them know that you can invest in your character and your identity as a man in Christ during that day with other men. And of course, it happens many times after Super Saturday because Stepping Up is a year-long resource, either a 10-week series or a one-day event that you can do anytime, as well as many guys doing it on Super Saturday.
Beautiful. Now, we have seen players making headlines for their antics off the field in recent weeks, but you've said the ingredients that make up a super husband and father are no different than what goes into the Super Bowl in terms of being a champion. How so?
Well, to be a champion in the NFL, you've got to have a vision of the long-term goals and be willing to channel everything toward that goal to be a Super Bowl champion. Secondly, you need to tie every day's execution to it, so you need a game plan. Thirdly, it's sacrifice and commitment. And fourth, it's teamwork. Mm-hmm. You've got to put your teammates ahead of yourself. And usually the most humble team is the one that goes to the playoffs and wins the Super Bowl. Now, it's hard for that team to repeat because with it comes so many accolades and so much money and so much attention that the individual pride overshadows the humility that makes for a great team.
Real quickly, how do men get signed up to participate in Stepping Up Super Saturday?
Well, on the website at mensteppingup.com, you might find locations where it's being held near you, or you could grab the DVD and host it in your own church, although it's kind of late for that. Or you can just do Men Stepping Up at home. So Stepping Up at home is easy. You download it to your computer. You invite a son or two of yours or another guy or two to come over to your house and go through it on Saturday. So mensteppingup.com. There's a blog where I've been writing some articles. Dennis Rainey has a ton of stuff there. And of course, how to get the Stepping Up resource or do Men Stepping Up at home is right there at mensteppingup.com.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Good to be with you. And thanks for focusing on Men Stepping Up.
Up next, we're off to the Big Apple, where Super Bowl players spoke to CBN about their #1 priorities. Stay tuned for the pregame coverage you won't see anywhere else. On Sunday, the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks will meet at Super Bowl 48 in a battle between a #1 offensive versus a #1 defense.
Sports reporter Sean Brown is already on the scene where he talked with players on both sides. Take a look.
Hello and welcome to Times Square here in New York City for CBN's coverage of Super Bowl 48, where the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks will battle it out to try and stake their claim to the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Winning the Super Bowl for the Seahawks would mean their first championship in franchise history. For the Broncos, it would make their 3rd Super Bowl championship. Now, for a lot of the players on both teams, playing in a Super Bowl is a dream they've had since they were kids. In fact, for many of them, playing would define the very fabric of who they are. But for a few of them, their identity can't be found on the football field. because there's a lot more to them than just playing football.
The Denver Broncos are highly favored to win in Sunday's matchup between the NFL's two #1 seeds. Jacob Tamme and Britton Colquhoun say, yes, they're hungry for a championship, but their happiness doesn't depend solely on winning.
Winning in football is really important to me. It's very important, but it does not define me as a man, and really, ultimately, I don't think it defines anyone. I mean, it's something that, back from my days in high school, my high school coach taught us God, family, football, and you got to keep it in that order. I think at the end of the day, you got to realize that it is a game, and that God is authoring a bigger plan, and that's certainly a humbling feeling and keeps you grounded.
It will be awesome to win the Super Bowl, but yet all these guys that have won the Super Bowl are still trying to win the Super Bowl. But that's just like the same with, money's not going to make you happy. All these things that people strive for happiness, that didn't give you happiness. You're going to be happy on that stage, hoisting that trophy. You're going to go to bed at night, and then it's just you and God, and so that's why, faith and then you can add in family and things like that are what really fills you up and really, gives you purpose and just gives you true joy, not just, meantime happiness.
This is Steven Johnson's second season in the NFL, and he says he's blessed to be where he is because earlier in his career he was told he would never play football again.
I hurt my knee. I blew my knee out in prep school, and I had plenty of people tell me I couldn't play football anymore. I was never the fastest. I was never the strongest. But I tell you what, the Lord took David, and he conquered Goliath and did all that. And he's just told me that, look, if you have a dream, go chase it. If you believe in me, I will be the super to your natural, and I'm just honored to be able to continue moving forward with this team, hopefully for as long as I can, and just continue to serve the Lord.
Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson has been criticized as an athlete for most of his life, mainly because of his size. But in the last 2 seasons, his numbers have made him a giant among men. He's the first quarterback in the Super Bowl era to post a 100-plus passer rating in each of his first 2 seasons. And he says while the stats are great, he couldn't have done any of it without the Lord.
I had a lot of critics that tell me, oh, he's too short. And that was the only thing they could really say in terms of my game. And I wasn't going to believe it. I wasn't going to allow that to stop me from doing what God had put me on this earth for. In terms of my faith and how it's played a major role, it's been everything to me, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that. And I give him all the glory. It's a tremendous honor just to be able to play the game of football. And at the end of the day, football doesn't define me. I believe that my faith is the #1 thing in my life, and then family, and playing football.
Clint Gresham and Chris Maragos both recognize that the spoils of being professional athletes are only here for a season, and say that it's much more rewarding to invest in a relationship with the Lord that lasts forever.
I think that the second that we start to put our identity in anything other than Jesus, that's a slippery slope. And because one day football will be gone, and one day people will not know who I am or care to interview me. And so if I put my value in the fact that somebody wants to talk to me about football, man, when it's all done, your life's gonna not be that great.
My faith is everything to me. I was just saying earlier that Jesus saves. Jesus saves, and it's my true desire for all of you to come to know his love. To know that you're loved, to know that you're here with purpose, that you're here for a reason.
Free safety Chris Maragos has had a remarkable journey to get here. And he says he's learned that there's a void that only the Lord can fill, and that during times of weakness, that's when he shows up strong.
I've chased the things of this world, man. Before I gave my life to who Jesus was, I chased the money, I chased the drugs. I was doing drugs, selling drugs. My faith in Jesus through those times where everything was up and down, he continued to stay the same. And when your hope and your trust is on the firm foundation and who Jesus is, nothing can shake you. And there were moments where it was very difficult. There were moments when it was tough, but those trials produced perseverance in me. It produced character. It produced what you're seeing today.
The weekend is here, and that means it is time for family-friendly movie reviews with Bob Waliszewski. He's director of Focus on the Family's entertainment review department called Plugged In Online. Bob, there's a new movie called Labor Day that sort of surprised you. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's rated PG-13. Kate Winslet's in it, Tobey Maguire, Josh Brolin's in it. Judging from the trailer, I didn't think that I was going to be able to do more than probably a 1.5. Just seemed like it was going to head that direction. Ended up giving this film a 3 out of 5 for family friendliness. Of course, that's not 2 solid thumbs up, but neither is it a thumbs down. Essentially, Winslet character she has a bit of a social anxiety disorder. She's afraid to go out in public. She's gone through a nasty divorce, but she has a very close relationship with her 13-year-old son. One day while out in public shopping, something she doesn't like to do, a man comes up to her son. He's got some blood on his face and some blood on his shirt. He says, "Can I have a ride?" Well, the son can't call it, but he directs him to his mom. She reluctantly says yes. He gets in the back seat of the car and drops a bombshell when she says, where am I taking you to? And he says, "How about your house?" Well, she reluctantly drives him there, and when they go through the door, he drops another bombshell. He says, "I just escaped from prison and I need a place to hide out. Can I stay here?" It doesn't have anything explicit in the film, but I would say it has a simmering sensuality, and that's the reason it gets a 3 out of 5.
Well, for those looking for a film they could see as a whole family, is there anything out there with potential?
You know, yeah, Frozen, for instance, been out a while, but it's still doing well in the theaters, and it's there. The Nut Job, another animated feature, wasn't as good as far as the story of a Frozen, but it has that potential, something you could take the kids to. If we're looking for something more for the teens on up in the family, I would suggest check out Saving Mr. Banks. And last week's new release, Give Me Shelter, which, by the way, that film didn't do very well at the box office, didn't even crack $1 million, but it deserved a lot better. It was just a pro-life, had a great family message. A little gritty at times, but for teens on up, I think it fits the bill.
Awesome. Bob Waliszewski, thanks for your insights. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Well, that's going to do it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
And take the time to tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you join us again right here next time. Have a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend.